excited about. And we had a restructuring. It was quite funny because we had a restructuring and my department was sunset, kind of. And the PA to the GMD at that time, she was going on maternity leave, and we needed someone, or the GMD needed someone to relieve her for those 3 months that she was away. And I applied for the role. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed what I was doing. I just put into work what I loved doing. And when she came back, she moved into something bigger. And my boss asked me if I wanted to continue. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to do this. And here I am today, 15 years after, I'm still with him.
Thank you so much for sharing. That longevity is so inspiring. I know that you are currently the managing director. I know that in the profile you said something else, and apologies for that. But I want to ask, before you assumed this position, why did you first become a PA? Oh, sorry, an EA. Yeah. So I think I'm one of those people who stumbled into the role. Hi everyone, good afternoon by the way. So my bio says I started off my career in 2019, that's not when I started off my career, but that's for the sake of this path is when my career started. So I got into, I think, Total, the graduate internship program. I was working with the business compliance department, and I was there. It was a ton of work. I think my boss had complained about something, and then I had to speak to HR. And I told her everything I felt. I was just like, I'm doing 3 people's jobs, first of all, right? So then the opening for PA to EDSG came up, and she was like, it's going to be much more easier than the job. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And that was how I became PA to EDSG. It was the first time that I was working purely as an assistant to anyone, and I really liked it because I felt like it really aligned with my personality. So moving forward, I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to do this, but I knew I didn't want to be a PA. I wanted to be something else. So I said, okay, I'll figure out what that is. Ended up in executive assistance and did that for a bit before I moved to Space Finish as the CEO, the founder's executive coordinator, not assistant, and then chief of staff again until here. So I kind of stumbled into it and then fell in love with the role because it felt like my jam. It really felt like my thing. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it my best. That's how I'm here.
Awesome.
Bukola, can you tell us about your journey?
How much time do you have? Okay, I understand. Okay, so thank you again for, the opportunity to be here. So my journey, I would say, kind of like, I think I won't quite say I stumbled into it. So let me try and capture the story as succinctly as possible. So it began, my EA journey began at PZ, but it didn't begin as me applying for the role. So for context, I have my background in computer science from University of Lagos. Any advocates in the house? Hey. Okay, so and when I was done with I did my NYC in advertising agency in Lagos, and I knew I did not want to continue. After my 1 year there, I was very sure. So one thing about me, I'm always clear about what I want to do, next, even before I'm done with where I am, right? So that always sort of informs the opportunities that I take, right? And so when my 1 year during my NYC was going to be over, I knew I didn't want to continue there because I wanted structure. Again, I interned in GT Bank while I was in school, so I understood how a structural environment should be, right? So I wanted structure in my post-NYC life. So then an opportunity came from PZ Concerns as they were deploying SAP at the time. The role was data analyst, right? And to also just help them with their data while they were transforming into the SAP space. So I was excited about that because again, when I was in school, I was also taking courses in analytics and things like that. And so I interviewed for the role. In fact, it was a stressful interview. I eventually got in, but I was waiting for my offer letter. I got a call from the HR and they said, for some reason, the last person that interviewed me said they should not look for someone else, that she felt I was too old. that was literally it. And the HR felt bad. I was like, he knew everything that I'd gone through, and it was like, you know what, it was going to keep me top of mind when there was another role. So I get a call a month later, and he says, oh, there's an open position. And I was like, what's the position? He's like, EA to the CFO and other executives. I'm like, what's that? That was literally what I said, you know, like, what is that? What am I supposed to be doing the executive assistant? I had the only idea that I had about being an EA at the time, you know, when I took the role, was that it was like a, you know, just basically personal assistant, you know, doing mundane tasks and things like that. And I didn't want that, you know, because I'd seen a few of my friends who had probably been in that role and frustrated with it in the past, right? So fast forward, I took the role, and it was something that I didn't anticipate, you know, the level of tasks, you know. But then beyond the tasks, I was also working with the board, you know, and then I also worked directly with the EA to the CEO, who, because of our working relationship, she was a link to my getting into InterSwitch, right? So I'm laying that foundation just so that we understand that even when we stumble upon a role that we seemingly are not prepared for, the onus is on us to be excellent at it. You never know where, you know, the next opportunity is going to come from. So I left. I also had a roadmap. I told them when I was taking the EA role at PZ Cosmins that I only wanted to do it for a minimum of 2 years, and after 2 years, or I haven't given them 1 year, that I would like to transition into another role, because based on my background, I didn't want to just be an EA, you know, for a long time. And the HR agreed at the time. And when the time came, and I was like, it's the mark that I gave, you know, can we do the transition now? And they said no, so, you know, not yet. So I moved, and then I left at the time to take up a sales role. I've never done sales, by the way. And then in between that and in between when I took up the sales role, about a year later, Esther here, you know, she was going on mat leave, and they were looking for someone to take, you know, to sort of take up her role whilst she was away, and that was how like they found me, you know. And I would say today, the 4 months that I worked with Mitchell has transformed my mindset, you know, the transformation that I had even while I was in PZ of how an executive assistant should work, took it up a notch, and took it up a couple of notches, because it just transformed the way I would see managing executives. You know, it became from, you know, just managing calendars to, it just transitioned from, you know, from just doing tasks to making an impact in the role, then to finding a purpose, like the next, you know, that you want to be, right? So I think that's my journey. And sorry, let me just add. So when I took the 4-month contract as well into Switch, I don't know if Esther, you remember. I remember I had 3 interviews before I joined into Switch, and I had one consistent question through my interview: will there be an opportunity for me to transition to a new role once my contract is over? Because I wouldn't just want to come in and then leave after 4 months, you know. And I asked, when I had my interview with Mitchell, I asked him the same question. When I met with the head of HR, I asked her the same question. And for some reason, the question was top of mind for all of them, right? Because I remember in my month 2, Mitchell came and to my desk one day and was like, oh, we started looking at what they're doing in other units, you know. Into Switch, we have several units. You start looking at it now so that you know where you want to go. And I remember the head of HR as well. She had it in her. She was like, oh, where is Bukola going to go? I was like, don't worry, God is going to sort it. You know? And so, yeah, that's my story. Yes.
Thanks so much. This is. Yeah, please tell us, because I know that now you see yourself as Chief Operating Officer. Yes, and prior to that, you had quite a number of years doing executive support. Exactly. Tell us about that journey.
Okay, so I kind of like stumbled into it, like she mentioned. So I started my career. Well, actually, I started working like you said. I taught French. There was a break in between school. between the 300 level and 400 level, so I took out that time to teach French because I was studying French at Ola at the time. And then after school, my interest was in communication, so I worked briefly in an outdoor communication or outdoor advertising company as a client service executive, but I was working very closely with the managing director at the time, who was owner of the business. So I was basically doubling as his PA, right? And then I found that more interesting than the client service role I was playing, because client service had me going out to meet clients, interface with them, engage them, sell, market, and all of that. And that was not my personality. I'm a very, what's the word now? Very I like to internalize a lot. So I like my space, and I found that being a PA at the time gave me the opportunity to be very comfortable and operate from there. So I would be very comfortable in my space and be able to operate outwardly. So I started to manage his schedule. I started to manage basically the business from his support point of view, right? And I found myself falling in love with the role. So eventually, when after a couple of years working with him, I saw another opportunity in a PR firm, and I just moved on there as the EA now, the EA to the CEO of the firm. And I really enjoyed it. So working at an EA, I found that I was wearing so many hats, but I was doing it for a place of comfort. So I just really enjoyed it a lot. But one thing I always did when I was working as an EA was I always understood the fact that it's more than the administrative part a lot of times. And that value that when I do that, I find that my executive that I'm working with at the time would find it very helpful and very supportive, that I'm thinking beyond the scheduling of flights, calendars, and all of that. I'm actually now part of the business. I'm a strategic partner to him. I know I'm sitting with him at meetings for HR, for business development, sales, strategy. I'm part of all of that. And I'm beginning to preempt his every move. I'm beginning to recommend and I'm beginning to advise. And I found that is this what EA is? I really love this. So it's because you're not in the box. You're like part of the entire, exactly. You're part of the entire system, end to end. You're making decisions with your boss, and you're seeing things from different perspectives. You are an employee, but you're also sitting at the top with him. So you have that opportunity to give a lot of recommendations from perspectives that he may not have. And I really enjoyed it. Again, I kept progressing. So I think it was the lady the year before who mentioned that her CV was kind of like all over the place. So my CV is kind of like that, 2 years max, and I'm moving on because I always get to that top, like what's next? I'm able to do this, especially if there's no room for me to progress to the next step. So I moved on again to HR consulting firm, Kimberly Ryan actually, and I worked as the EA to the director of the company. And there again, it was a beautiful experience working. I always see opportunities in everything. So many times there are challenges, you're just thrown out there to deal with situations, solve the problem. That's what the executive wants to get. He doesn't want to get an issue, he wants to get a solution, right? And when I did that, I really enjoyed it. And then I left because when I went to the company, and I fell in love with HR actually. And then I found, okay, this is now what I really know. Across all the units of the business, the sales, business development, and all of that, I found that I love HR. And I just use all the skills that I learned from there, and I transitioned into human resources. Further, years down the line, my executive called me again and said, you know what, you need to come back now my business. So that's how I got the opportunity to come back to Kumulima, and I'm sitting there as the CEO now, running the business. And again, I see that as the skills that I was able to gather all from the entire trajectory of my career as an EA, because I was part of every single aspect of it. So I'm able to now manage operations because I have that oversight of different things. So that's basically how I'm doing that.
That's so powerful. I wanted to ask, because you talked about moving from just being an assistant to strategic partnership, and there are a lot of young people even here that are EAs,
How long did it take you to grow into that capacity?
Okay, so for a while I was lost. I'm not gonna lie. When I started out, I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, especially when like I said, I stumbled into the PA role. I found it very comfortable. It was like a comfort zone for me because most of the time I was hiding behind the scenes. And I'm the engine. I get everything done. Then the engine is what you take it, run with it. But eventually I was outgrowing that, right? And now I have to attend the meetings on behalf of my boss. Now I have to speak on behalf of my boss. And so I found that I had to, I can't really put a number to how long it took me, but I found that as time went on, I had to realize that you're growing, right? So it was having a growth mindset that made me realize that you can't stay in this position forever. You may not know what you want to do, but as much as you can, gather all the learnings that you can from every single thing that you're doing and apply it in what you do. And eventually when I did stumble into human resources and fell in love with it, then I realized, okay, this is what I want to pursue, right? But even though you may not know what you want to achieve at the time, you don't know if you want to, how long do I want to get here for, how long do I want to support for, or even if you want to do that full time, I don't think there's really anything wrong with that, right? But it's about finding what you do and deriving joy from it, especially as you're adding value to the executive you're working with and adding value to yourself. I think maybe started before, so they said something about when you make your executive life easy, your life is a breeze because you're just ticking boxes. Because everything that you've put structure in place and everything is a breeze. You're just getting it done, and your executive is very confident. Trust is there, and that's this one here really.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to speak to Esther. Now you've been an EA for 15 years. I would like, and I know that you talked about enjoying administration, but from the time that you started working as an EA to, where you are now, can you tell us about the journey from just moving from, just being an assistant to now strategic partnership to a point where Michelle can trust you to handle certain things because of how you both have worked together?
Right, thank you. So I would say I started off as a PA, just doing the regular stuff, booking meetings, welcoming guests, planning the trips, or telling someone to book his flights and all of that. But as I increased my capacity, I didn't just remain there. I studied a lot, I read a lot, I attend conferences like this one, I go for trainings on a regular basis. I had to improve myself and upgrade myself, excuse me. So I have an MBA right now from Excel University because I needed to understand the business. I needed to understand what he's doing, what does InterSwitch do, what does he really need me to do to make his work easier. So as time went on, more responsibilities were given to me. Today, I have over 10 people that report to me. Excuse me. I have over 10 people that report to me. So all the front desk officers in InterSwitch across the country, they all report to me. And today I can handle projects single-handedly. All I just need to do is just give him reports. Tell him this is what we're doing, how much is the budget, I run with the budget, and just come back and give him reports, and that's all.
Thank you. Legal Martier.
Again, you have to really trust. So I just wanted to add to what Esther said. So another way to just sort of, improve your capacity is when you are able to build trust with, your executives by anticipating their needs. That's the quickest way for them to trust you and go from being a PA, being a regular assistant to a strategic partner, like transitioning. That transition, it starts from when they can trust you with literally everything, little things, just anticipating their needs. If I can say a story. I remember one time while I was working with Mitchell, and I knew the board meeting was going to come in a couple of weeks. And for some reason, after church on a Sunday, I just said, okay, let me go do X, Y, Z. And then I went to the office when I left, and then I get a call from oh sorry, the morning Sensaco is already done. He was like, how? I was like, well, I was just at it. He was like, so it was that, the ability to just be able to anticipate it is, okay, this is coming up. You need to like, think not just on your feet in the spur of the moment, but like the future needs that will arise to be able to just preempt and then execute before you're asked.
Thank you. That has been such a common thing since yesterday, just being, even today, just being able to take initiative and anticipate needs and just do things before you're asked to do. I think something that I'm also taking from here, which has been said so many times in the course of these 2 days, is you're responsible for your growth. If you want to grow in your role, you have to be intentional about growing. There's a lot of information on YouTube, and you cannot just sit down and think that growth will come upon you. You have to be intentional about upskilling, and that's one of the main ways to grow in this role and actually scale up and do and other things. I want to ask you, Oluchi, in the course of your work as executive support, can you speak to us about limiting beliefs that you had to overcome to get to where you are now?
So I think two very important ones comes to mind. The first one is just right off the back of what you said. Your personal development is not anybody's cup of tea, to be honest. It is your responsibility. I find a lot of times, so now in this position, I have to sit in a ton of interviews, building the team, and people tend to say, well, what does the company have to do about that? That is important, right? What does the company have to do about personal development and things like that? But my response to them always, and it's the kind of culture that we're trying to build at Space Finish, is one where we are intentional about you growing as a team member. It's important that you grow so that the business grows. But more importantly, I tend to reward people who want to grow, who are intentional about their growth. And as an executive support professional, it's even more important for you because you have to grow. Your path is very accelerated, so you have to grow very quickly. You're dealing with someone who's light years more experienced than you. If you're not growing at a pace that sort of matches, or that can bring you to a point where you match very quickly their knowledge, their perspective. So, even your mind, how you think about things, how you process things, your communication, how you communicate. If you're not able to get to a point very quickly where you match closely, your executive, it becomes very difficult. Even things as simple as communication is a problem, So one of the reasons my boss used to say that his biggest fear with me is that one day I would outgrow him, and it was such a funny statement to make, but I'm very jealous about my personal development. So that's the first thing. Nobody owes you that. To develop you, it's your responsibility. The second thing is working in that role means that a lot of the time in meetings, in conversations, you're most likely the most junior in the room. You're most likely the least experienced person in the room. And there's a tendency to feel like, okay, I'm taking notes, that's all I'm here to do. I'm too young to contribute. I'm too young to understand anything they're talking about. So I'm just going to focus on being invincible. And I can tell you for free, it doesn't help you. It doesn't help your growth. It also doesn't help your executive because the quicker you are, again, able to get to that point where you can stand closely, because there's a lot of things you learn and experience. You really can't outrun those years of experience. But getting to a point where you can add value is very important. And it starts from understanding that you are valuable. So sitting down in whatever room that you're in, I am valuable in this room. I am not here to just take notes. Even if I'm taking notes, there has to be something that I can bring to the table. There must be a perspective. Everybody here is a chief of something, for instance. I'm the only random employee here. They're like one of them mentioned, They're perspectives that they would never have. They would never be able to understand. There's noises in the company, their voices, their feelings, their things that are happening in business that they would never be able to understand just because of where they're at. And that is one of the value that you bring. I'll give you a very practical example. When I joined Space Finish, there's a thing they do every week. It's called Departmental Lead Sync. It's just a conversation with all the heads of departments, where we just run through all the issues with the business, run through what we're doing for the week. And I started off taking notes. Obviously, at the time, my CEO was leading the meeting. I started off taking notes, and my thing was, okay, I'm taking notes, but there has to be something. So I'll take notes today, take notes next week, and I would always review the notes against the previous week. And after I did that for like 2 or 3 months, I noticed that there was a lot of redundancy in communication, in conversations that we were having. So I thought about it, I thought of a solution, I felt like the meeting was not effective. And it's difficult for him to step back, and because he's not thinking about the effectiveness of the departmental single meeting, you know, so, and I went to him and I was like, oh, we're having these sort of conversations repeatedly. I think there's something off. This is my recommendation. I think we should do this. And he thought, okay, so we sat down, we thought about it. We optimized the meeting for efficiency. And after he did it like twice, he was just like, yeah, I'm out. Over to you. And you know, that's how I started leading those meetings. I went from taking notes to now owning those meetings. And now I drive the meetings completely. But, you know, and it started off from wanting to add value, knowing that I'm valuable, even though everybody in this room is small. And it doesn't stop, honestly, because now I'm interim managing director for design and build. I don't have a background or any sort of thing in construction. I haven't worked in construction, and being intentional about adding value is super critical. Those are two, ways to go as in this path, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's such a powerful reminder, especially for years that are, just coming up. It's not always about the task. It's never really about the task. It's always about the big picture, the outcomes. So we need to move from just thinking about our work as, oh, I need to do this task, to what are we trying to achieve? What is the goal? What is the expected outcome? What am I contributing towards? Because if you don't understand that vision, you can't help anybody. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Pokola? Do you want to share? What are some of the, and I know that you did that for not very long, but what were some of the limiting beliefs that you needed to overcome to even get to where you are now?
I think it's sort of I think one of them I would say is finding your purpose, right, within the role, especially if it's not something that you are right out of the back wanted to do. There's some people that they're like this, like Esther, she loves, administration, she loves the fact that, that was how she applied for the role. And so for other people who are maybe like me, who didn't outrightly set out to be an E, and now you're in the role, they're trying to find the meaning. So first of all, it's the time to take to find the meaning in the role, and you can't take too long, because the quicker you're able to find meaning in the role, the quicker you're able to make impact, or the quicker you're able to transition from just mundane tasks like setting up calendars to actually effecting changes within the business that you're supporting, right? And then transforming that into making impact. And it's when you're able to then start beginning to find impacts, that's when you'll be able to find the purpose. That's the meaning of why you're actually in the role. Because when you discover that, like, my purpose here is not just to organize meetings and set up travel routes and ensure that meetings are going well, it's team on the table. It's much beyond that. It's engaging executives and finding out whose meeting should come before this one, because this person just stresses on most. But if the head of marketing comes into this, comes in to meet with him first, no, you can't have this time. You're gonna come in at this time. So it's you deciding literally how your executives' lives go throughout the day. It's you affecting their making decisions that will affect their personal space, their intellectual, emotional, all of it. It's you making some decisions, and it comes with when you then enter the place where you found that, okay, this is where I'm here. So finding meaning in the role, it wasn't anything that I had to overcome quickly, and it came from me recognizing that this person's life is in his hands. It's so you need to recognize that, every decision you make and the decisions you choose to not make, or the the proactiveness that you feel to take, it's gonna affect. There's gonna be a ripple effect within the entire school, and it's going to affect not just your work but also the business you're managing. So being able to just find a purpose. Once you find the purpose, again, for those who are probably like me, who always want to maybe do something more outside of being an EA, is once you find the purpose that you are in that role, you'll be able to quickly recognize where you are going to transition into. For me personally, I've always loved engaging people, just engaging people, finding solutions for them, whether it's making me money or not, right? Just engaging them to find out, anticipate needs, and find out what they want. And in my personal life, my friends call me the pro, because if you need something, just call Buki. Buki will connect you to someone that has what you're looking for, even if she doesn't have So it's to be able to enter into the space where you recognize your own self, where you are, and how you bring your best self. I said bring all of yourself to work. Bring your best self to work, the best of yourself into work, and then with that, you can then find out what's next for me. Like for me, I was able to recognize that because I love to engage executives, well, where else would I go? Is to go and sell products to executives, or not necessarily sell, but to, find out what they need and then get the solution to them. And when I was able to translate that in the company that I was in at the time, into Switch, was to move into sales. And that's how I've literally been able to evolve. Also, one of the other limiting beliefs that I had again was maybe the capacity, like almost limiting my own capacity. Right, okay, if I can do this, maybe I shouldn't really talk to this person, maybe I should. It's almost like play small, yeah. So don't play small. If you're trying to reach $10, if you have his number, call him straight. Don't try to call his, don't try to call, don't feel like, I'm just here to, let me not, no. So go all out with the network you already have. Go all out to connect with people, like, as I said, attend conferences like this or others. Go all out to make connections. You never know, where your own network will be able to influence the executives that you're supporting or the business that you're covering, right? So just go all out. Don't play small. Don't think that you cannot handle. Look at Esther, she's managing projects within, a global or some organization. So, don't think that I can't handle this. Just go all out. And being able to just come into the point where I then, I'm going to bring my full self or use my entire network to get done whatever I needed to get done. There were times when, requests came in for some things, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? The regular process will not allow you to achieve, an outcome but you bring in all your arsenals, make a call, do whatever you need to do. Basically, of course, legally, to get done what needs to be done. Don't think that, I can't reach this person because I am just the EA2. No, you're not just that. You're much more than that. And it's when you continue to do that, you find that, this is what I actually love to do. Like she said, she then realized that she loved to get into HR. I recognized that I actually loved to engage executives. I can walk into any room, without feeling that, I'm the whatever to whoever. I don't feel that way. I enter into the room and I engage you as a colleague, not necessarily as someone that is aware of the. Of course, with respect and decorum and all of that, but it's also just to also recognize your own strength and bring that to every room that you enter. Once you're able to do that, people will not even know who. They're wondering who is the CEO. Sorry, but always bring your optimal self into everything that you're doing, and you'll be able to find the purpose that way. And then if you need to, transit into another role or into even another industry, there are always transferable skills that you currently have that you can move into, into those roles. For me, it was to be able to engage people and manage relationships. From that, if you don't have repeat customers for anything, you don't have a business. You only have you probably only will make a sale, a couple of sales. But and then when you don't have people who are constantly talking about what you do based on how you've been able to manage them. And as executive assistants, the number one role that you're playing is managing relationships in that office for your executive. If people are fighting themselves because they were unable to see you, there's something missing. Or if people are having misunderstandings based on an outcome of, again, it's not to take all of the responsibility of what's going wrong in the office, but there are things that you can personally do to manage that. And I believe that once you walk in that football, you'll be able to transit if you want and make more impact. And people remember you for it and be able to recommend you for all the roles in the company.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I hope that if you're an executive assistant here, you are already thinking about what your purpose is in the role that you're in. I wanted to follow up on something you said. It just did that. I didn't come back. You come back to me. I would speak to Ochi actually. What is the hardest feedback that you received and how did it shape you? Because I know that because of the work that executive assistants do, there seems to be a lot of feedback that are sometimes not the nicest to receive. So if you can speak to that and how it has shaped you on your journey.
Okay, so I think the one that comes to mind is, so it was more a personal thing about work, but I'm a very independent person. I have over time just struggled with asking for help, and sometimes I feel like it's maybe rooted in a bit of pride, the kind of pride that I take to the kind of work that I do and just my results, right? So when I joined Space Finish, I had come from a lot more structure where I was asked to a business that run like a startup. So a lot of things were very fluid, there was a lot less structure. I come from working, on a team as an EA to an executive where if my principal wanted to travel, it was as simple as texting the travel department to having to own travel end to end. I mean, visa application, everything. And this was smack out of COVID. So even the travel scene was tough. And just generally it was almost like starting from scratch, so to say. And there were a couple of things I struggled with, to be honest. And my boss and I, we have a very interesting relationship. I think that this has been echoed throughout conversations today. Having setting the tone, I think as executive assistants, just by the way, I think you should set the tone for your relationship with the executive. It's such a game changer. When I resumed at Space Finish, I had a list of 30 get to know you questions. I wanted to know him. I didn't want to assume. I didn't want to think I knew anything. When it comes to things like confidentiality, what is confidential? When you say confidential, who is the exception? I want to know so that I don't make costly mistakes, because the truth is, working as an executive assistant, your mistakes can be very costly. They can be any other person at your level in the business can make mistakes and it's okay, but you can make mistakes and cost the business, So, when I started working with him, I would struggle with things. And one of my superpowers that I was figured out, whatever that thing is, I put my mind to it and I said I want to do this thing. I will figure it out. So say he gives me something to do, and if you knew how to do it, it will take you a couple of hours. I'll spend 2 to 3 days struggling with it, trying to figure it out. And he would ask me over and over, like, are you struggling with this thing? And I'm like, no, 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 I'm figuring it out. Don't worry, I'm figuring it out and getting to it. So when he calls me, he sits me down, he's like, do you know that my time is important? Like, my time is money. And I was like, yeah, it's you. And he was like, you know that if I tell you to do something and it takes you 30 hours to do it because you're trying to figure it out and you're struggling and you're not asking for help. And if you asked me for help and I helped you and it took you 2 hours to do it, you know that you're saving me money. She was like, so you understand that this behavior wastes my money, like it's costing me money. And I was like, yeah, if you put it like that. Yeah, so I was like, okay, all right. So since that conversation was a very tough conversation, and I really appreciate feedback like that. I like having tough conversations. In fact, it's one of the things. I had 30 questions and I had, I think, about 15 requests on how to work with me and asking to do the same. So it was one of the things I asked him for. I told him, I was like, give me feedback. In fact, if you're angry with me, tell me immediately. Not the one that tomorrow morning you're still carrying it in your chest. I was like, just announce to me when I annoy you so we can keep it moving. So since that day, I think for me the feedback was not just a blow to what I thought about things, but like I said before, there's also a mindset shift that must happen when you work with executives. You're not just thinking like a regular person, you're not just thinking like an employee, you're thinking about like the fact how you broke it down that you're not just wasting time, you're wasting money. And that's, to me, it really was like, okay, yeah, that's actually very true. So it's not just about my superpower being that I will get something done. It's now, I have to get things done in good time because, it's a waste of money if I don't do it. So that has been something that has shaped how I think about things. So I'm very open to asking for help now. I'm very open to delegating stuff now. If I even personally now, I think about my time in monetary terms. So when I think about this task, cleaning my house, do I really want to clean my house? Like I count it, I'm just like, yeah, this is how much my time is worth versus paying someone else money to do it, who would probably even do it quicker than I would do it because I'm not a skilled cleaner. So it really changed. It's stayed with me, but it really changed how I thought about the monetary value of time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know now that I went to that. And of course, because something you said I can relate to. You spoke about you spoke about being bold and connecting or creating your own network, right? But I know that there are a lot of executive assistants who struggle with meeting new people. And also, if they have to engage with another executive, like another CEO from another company, because they tell us to look at yourself as, oh, I'm the executive assistant of this person, or you're always looking for someone in the background to help you reach out to the person that you need to reach out to. And then you also spoke about not wanting to ask for help. So, and I feel like even for some executive assistants, there's also a smallness mindset where it's like, I can't even ask my principal for help because you don't want them to say something that you wouldn't like. I want us to talk about what is it that makes executive assistants think like that and how can they overcome that. So I'm going to start with you first and it'd be nice if you can speak on that.
Okay, I think it all starts from the mind, but I would say that, so we need to ask ourselves questions on why, like, what's your why? Why aren't I bold enough? So I asked why it was, I asked people what it was. When people are trying to bring me on projects, bring me anywhere, why are you doing this project? Why can't you talk to, other people who are executives? Why would you? So I like to start with yourself, right? Ask why, ask yourself why I'm trying to put it off. So I mean, if we start to dial it back, for me, I think I'll personally say I, um, from my, from growing up, I always had there was nobody I could ask a question, not in a, not in a rude way or anything, but I would say maybe it was because growing up, whenever my siblings wanted to ask my parents anything, I really wanted to tell them to ask, and but beyond all of that, even when I got to anywhere I was, even when I was in school, I could ask as they kneel down their wife, what did we do? That's when I was in high school. My friends used to call me the defender of the class because you can't just come in and make a demand. Please explain your reason behind it. Tell me why. Like I don't care if you're a 100 years old teacher. Why? I would ask you why always. So again, so to ask yourself why aren't I working off? So if I look back and maybe think about maybe a time when I couldn't talk to a person, it's just it's almost it's a very thin line between how you can, second guess yourself and how you can just feel that and enter into your own that hi, my name is, this is what I do, and what do you do? Again, you have to come into the realization that your work, requires you to know people. It does. There are several times whilst I was executive assistant, even when I was on EZ then, that the network that I had helped me. Again, when I'm trying to get something done, there's nobody I cannot ask for help. Like, how far? We need to get this thing done now. Where can we get this? How can we solve that? I remember when I was in PZ and the head of corporate, director of corporate affairs and admin, she was one of the directors I was executive assistant. She left like 6 months before our annual general meeting, which we used to hold in Abuja then, and I had to step into our role to coordinate, the entire country, to assemble. It was a big, it was a big step that a big role that I had to fill, but because I worked with her, and I'd worked with different business units, the heads of different business units, it was easy for me. So again, I remember when I was in Switch as well, so when I was transitioning from the the office of the GMD into, I wanted to do sales. I remember the director then coming to me and saying, "Coca, I've seen the way you've engaged executives in the past few months. I'd like you to start in the sales division from the key account management team." And what was our role? Our role was to, engage the top companies that was giving us, 80% of our revenue, right? And to just make them happy and make sure that the businesses were being retained and sustained. And all of that was basically managing executives from top to bottom. I remember then working with the senior manager that I was working with in key account management team. There are times where we need to reach someone in maybe First Bank or GTB. And I'm like, oh, I know, and I feel like, how do you know? I was like, oh, they used to work with my sister. And like, there's always a connection. So anywhere you go, just ensure that you connect to people and that they remember you. That they remember you, that when you pick up the phone and you want to call them, because trust me, eventually you're going to need, those rooms that you're able to walk in boldly. You're going to need the connections that you make there in the long run, even in the short run, whilst you are moving into your next role. There's several meetings that we had to make. I'm like, oh, I remember, okay, let me just say this story. There was a time when Access Bank had yanked to switch off their ATMs, and there was just a lot of in between the sales team and the operations team, and there was just a lot of back and forth. And they said, oh, they're trying to get a meeting. The head of the CIO then, and they started about we wouldn't meet today. We wouldn't meet on this call. They were just upset, right? And I was like, oh, let's go out there now. The CIO, we're trying to, let's go to the CEO. Like, then Everett was blessed memory. He said, oh, if that one will not even take alcohol. I was like, why do people take alcohol? I was like, okay, let's do the traditional way. Let's write a letter and ask for a meeting. And then my boss was looking at me like, are you sure? I said, let's attend it now. And then we'll go. And I was like, who's going to take the time and take the letter? And so I remember that day I got the letter, I got it signed. I remember sending it to the staff for mutual signature. And then I took it to the GMD or Access office then in Everett. And then I got in the contact of his EA, and I was like, oh please, this is what I'm trying to do. He's like, oh, come in at this time, just before he goes for his lunch, So I worked with him to also, ensure that I got in to see him. I got there, I just introduced myself. I was like, oh, uniform? He's like, oh yeah, it's not stupid. Again, maybe because I'm an active worker in church, so I connect with everybody, right, everywhere I go. I was like, oh, you must have probably recognized me from there, from church. And I was like, oh, sir, please, we're trying to have a meeting. This is this is the reason we're trying to have a meeting. He was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's not a problem. Tell, what's his name there, Ostas to give you the time. And so, going back to the office, I was like, oh, we're gonna meet with Eric next week. And I remember Isa eventually looking at me like, how did you get a meeting? I was like, well, again, we needed to, so it's not even just an EA thing is what I'm trying to say. Like there are times that even people who are executives, when they feel like, oh, something has gone wrong within an organization, we can't talk to this person, the problem, like, so you need to kill that, like, kill the mindset. Just believe that if you're trying to get something done, just go ahead and get it done.
Thank you. Alright. So, okay, like Rukia said, it's really about asking why, finding out why, and trying to overcome that. For me, it's about ensuring that I have growth mindset. And like I said earlier, for me, it's very personally and very introverted. So it was very comfortable for me to just keep in the background and get the work, write the speech, give it to me, go and talk. Do all the work, do the presentation, take back there. But eventually, I had to outgrow that. Like, I had to write the speech. Well, you are the one talking. Like, really, I find myself speaking to people, and making presentations at meetings, and it was a huge challenge for me. But every time I stood in front of people, I felt like I was not supposed to be here. These are CEOs and CFOs, and here I am just having made experience where I'm just an EA. What do I do now? See, they ask me a question, how am I going to answer? So I had to fight all of those things. And so I asked myself, why can't you do that? So if it means you're going to learn, take courses on upskilling yourself in the business, the actual business, because I've worked across different industries and organizations. So when I'm in for example, manufacturing, I have to go and you have to assemble a washing machine. The question will come up, you have to ask about executive, right? So it's about learning, developing business acumen and actual business skills, right? Because now you're a strategic partner to your executive. So it's having that good mindset, knowing that you can do anything if you put your mind to it. An executive once described me as Vivian can go out. Vivian can ensure that my dogs are home after get dog food, and from doing that, she's walking straight into a presentation and making a presentation to top cities. That's how versatile you have to be as an executive assistant. So don't ever think that's a belief in me, I can't do this. No, because getting that dog food, I didn't go to the market to get it. I called someone, like some domestic staff, and say, you go and get this. Now I've developed skills in delegation all of a sudden. Now I'm able to delegate a task from end to end and get a report to say it is done. I just call my friend and say, your dogs are fine, don't worry about it. But I didn't know that I went into the market to do it myself. So don't think anything is beneath you. When you're giving tasks, you challenge yourself, find how can I get this done effectively, and like I think I said, manage time, and you managing his money. Now you also have to worry about because he who have the patience to sit with that domestic staff and say, oh yeah, come on, go. Like, he doesn't have that patience to do that. But you'll be worried about it. So you've taken that off him, and now he's able to fly and do other things. So it's really comfort zones are very, very comfortable and they can just enclose you, but make sure that you're finding out ways to outgrow them so that you're exploring and doing other things. Every day I sit and talk to people, I have to like, because it's just a person that I am very, very introverted. Sometimes I say I'm shy. Nobody believes me, especially at work where I have to drive meetings, I have to drive, when we're having client presentations, I have to be the one to present. And they're like, okay, what's this, what's that? I'm like, "Oh." You guys have no idea the energy I have to put into it, but it's something, when you ask yourself why, you have the end goal in mind. So you know you have to do this. I have to learn. Okay, let me go and learn how to speak in public. Let me go and learn what I'm really speaking about to make sure that I'm representing my executive very well and I make them proud. I add value to them. And again, like the previous speaker said, they are happy, you're happy, everybody's happy. So, we have to have that growth mindset and make sure that whenever you feel yourself shrinking, go back, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I want to achieve? Why do I think I'm not good enough? And then when you start to answer those questions, you start to identify your weaknesses, maybe that is what's holding you back, and then you start to address them. That's how I do it.
That's hard. She mentioned something important. I think it's so important because I was going to mention it as well. Being versatile. You have to know a little bit about everything. It sounds like it's all of that, but it's really not. So like keep to the news, what's going on, how it affects your business, how it affects your executive. Just being versatile, being able to connect dots when they come, and just knowing a little bit about everything across different sectors, especially ones that are related to you. And when you go anywhere to meet people, like find out about their industry and how it probably impacts you. Like you never know how that conversation or how that information will help in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that it's a summation of some things that they've said. So I like to name things for what they are, and that feeling is imposter syndrome. It's actually what it is. So feeling like I'm not going to be here, or I'm too young, I can't talk to people, I'm not as experienced. First of all, just accept everybody deals with imposter syndrome. Nobody's spared. And when you work with, and you should know because as an executive assistant, I've seen my bosses over, at certain times. So it's like I now know that I'm not running out of it. So just accepting it and knowing that you can do big things despite being afraid. So the fact that you are fearful about a situation doesn't mean you shouldn't do that thing. It just means you're going to have to do it afraid. That's the first thing. The second thing is I tell myself that if I'm not smart, if I'm not all that, if I'm not that intelligent, I agree. But the person that puts me in this room is way smarter than me. So I'm in this room because a smart person decided I'm in this room. So definitely, I have to be in this room for a reason, right? So I'm not here by mistake. If anything, I can't bank on my ability to put myself here, but I can bank on the person who is way smarter, who's more wiser, who has run a business for much longer, who has dealt with people for much longer, and for some reason felt like I should be the one in the room. So I just say, okay, yes, I'm here for a reason. Then the third thing is, like I said, think value. I don't think that I can overestimate how important being someone who is really centered around value is. Understanding that you are a person of value and living that life as an individual. That when you think about your job, you're not just thinking about the tasks, the day-to-day tasks that you're doing, but you're thinking about impact. You're thinking about adding actual value to people. It's super important because when you get into a room, you are not confused as to the fact or as to what you're doing there. You know that there's a value that you have to add. So if I'm in an event with my boss and then a bunch of people here, everybody can do what it is that they're doing because everybody has a thing that they're there to do. But I also have a thing that I'm here to do. And there's a value that I bring in this room, and I'm going to really focus on bringing that value. The final thing, like she said, is growing. the reality is that when you start to engage executives, you are going to have to mature. They're not kids. They're not, and they're a lot less tolerant of childish behavior. So you're going to have to mature very quickly. You cannot keep, that childishness. You will need to mature very quickly. The second thing is you need to learn about stuff. You need to have information at your handtips. You cannot, because if you're talking to executives, they're not going to talk about random things, so the sky is blue and things like that. They're probably having conversations, and you want to be able to contribute no matter how small it is. Oh, this particular policy, or businesses are talking about this particular policy, and if it's just a little line that you can contribute, it not only does it signal to the other person that this person is a person of value, but also makes you feel more at home because you can speak to something that they're speaking about. You're not confused as to what they're saying. So growing very quickly, read about things, be an avid reader, take cognizance of what's happening in your business environment, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in just the business landscape, understand what's happening in your industry, like she said, what's happening. If you're in manufacturing, like she said, what is happening in manufacturing? I mean, design and build. I've had to learn a ton of things about design and about the industry, about real estate, even related industries like real estate and other things. Understand what is happening there so that when you gather with people who are more senior than you, you can contribute. You are a lot more confident because you know that you're not, if someone asks you a question, you're not like, you're not going to be embarrassed. You can actually hold your own. So those are things that are very important in battling, that food.
Okay, thank you. Once again. So I'll use myself as an example. In 2006, I just completed my NYSC and I got a job with SolidWorks then. And we were running a project for ages, Abuja Geographic Information System. And my boss then, Rita, she said to me, "You're going to go and meet the director, Minasara, and tell him this is what we want." And I said, "Me, go and speak to the director." How? Imagine going to speak to the director of the public office. And she said, "Yes, you're going to do that, and you will go to Julius Berger as well, and speak to the director as well." And I'm like, how am I going to do all of this? So what did I do? Because she wasn't backing out. She said, "We're going to do it for the team." And I had to do it for the team. So what did I do? I took down all the information I was going to speak to Minasara about, and also Christian in Julius Berger. I tried to understand the data because Julius Berger was giving us the data that we needed for Abuja Geographic Information System. And I practiced. So what am I saying to you? Practice. Practice, practice, practice. So I sit down in front of the mirror, I practice speaking aloud to executives, and I do that often. And before I knew it, it became a part of me. So today, I'm bold to go sit down in front of people and I can speak. I'm very, I just want to be behind. I just want to be myself. If possible, I just want to sit at the back. I don't want you to notice that I'm there. But with my role, I have to take up responsibilities. I have to speak. I have to talk. And this helped me because when I started working in the French government, I was working directly with the French cultural attaché. And he said to me, "We need to lease this property. And I want you to go pick down the cost down to 25 million. And I said, "How am I going to do that?" He said, "You're going to do that because you're going to represent me." It's a good thing that I've been practicing. So I had to read more, I had to ask questions so that when I had to go to have that meeting to pick down the cost of the lease, I could do it with all confidence. It didn't stop there because I had to work with ambassadors. From time to time, I have to call all the ambassadors in Nigeria just to confirm that they are still the ambassador of that country representing the different countries. I have to welcome them into the center. I have to speak to the different persons, different attachés. It helped me, and today I'm able to switch. I'm the secretary of the senior leadership committee. So I handle all the matters that has to do with the senior leadership committee. If I hadn't built myself over the years, it would have been tough for me. So what am I saying to you? Build your capacity, practice, practice, practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's something that people, well, there's a term that people use to describe their bosses sometimes. And I don't know if anyone has worked with anybody who has that title. My boss is demanding. What does that mean? I'm sure you've heard it before. What does that mean? And if you can describe that, I'd like you to also share how you've been able to, if you've worked with someone like that, how you've been able to develop trust over time. Because I think a thing that follows that description is hard to please this person. This person, whatever you do is not good enough. Right. So I don't know if you've had any experience working with the demanding executive. First of all, what does that mean? And if you've worked with someone like that, how were you able to build trust?
So, when people say someone is demanding, I don't think that people are demanding. I think it's just the nature the of where you have to sit, the position that you're in. So now as interim MD, wow, the amount of things that I have to do on a daily basis is crazy. So like, I don't think it's just that the person is demanding, and this is not underestimating the fact that some principles can be, I guess, toxic in some sense. And to be honest, if that's the situation that you're in, you should be trying to move, because it's not the best for anybody to work in that sort of situation. So I don't see people as demanding. I see just the position that they're in as demanding. It helps me to know that it's not this person. So when the person is requiring things from me, I am not personalizing it as, oh, my executive is asking too much.
It's not personal.
It's not personal. It's the job, right? So, and if I want him to succeed, then I'm committed to ensuring that what he has to do is done. Now, how do you gain trust? I think that I've heard traces of these conversations today. Just trust. I like to say that an executive and an executive assistant relationship is like marriage. It's like marriage on some end, and on the other end is like having a child as the executive assistant, to be honest. And sometimes it feels like, it felt like my executive was my child. Some days I'm just like, oh Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus, like this is a grown man, God, what is this? But, some of the things that I've done to help build trust is setting the tone of the relationship. That was such a game changer, because from day one, there were no surprises. So I had 30 questions. And first of all, having those 30 questions.
Could you share those questions with us?
If
You can give us the list. I think it'd be great to share.
Okay, yeah, I was to look for the list. And I think that honestly, it depends on, so there's some things that are standard, but there are a few things that I think you should research your executive before you resume. So there's some things that were tailored to him, and one of the things that I noticed that helped us do was he really opened up, because he just felt like, okay, this person wants to know stuff, so I'm going to pay for stuff to know. So the 30 questions, and then I had a list of 15 things. So after the session of going through our 30 questions, it took us like 3 days, by the way, to go through all 30 questions. After that, I called him and I was like, you know what, I want to lay the rules for our relationship. I want you to tell me how you would like it to work. I want you to be as explicit, as clear as possible. Let me know what are the do's and the don'ts. Let me know what are my guardrails, what are my boundaries. I want to know everything. And so he told me how he likes work, he told me, just different things. And I told him as well, this is also my expectation. And I think that from day one, what it helped us do is that we were very clear on what each other's boundaries were. So I knew not to push past my boundaries. I knew the exact boundaries, because the truth is, when you start any kind of relationship, you test the boundaries. You have to test the boundaries to learn the boundaries. But having those boundaries clear from the onset meant that there was no testing of boundaries, meant that we didn't have a rocky start. We had a very smooth start. It was very easy. It also made him feel like I cared about the success of our relationship, and that in itself anybody would be happy to know that someone cares about the success of a relationship with them. So that was the first thing that I did. The second thing is, I think someone has said it on this panel. Well, maybe that should be the third. The second thing is care about your executive. Simple as that. Care about them. You actually have to care, because, and they will know. They will know if you care about them. That's the simple thing. They know it's no matter how you try to hide or not hide it, it's very obvious when you care about your executive. It's also very important because it's very lonely at the top. For them, it's a very lonely place because I was having a conversation with my CEO yesterday, and we're talking about company culture, and I was just telling him that one of my favorite things about the culture is how we're so close-knit, and he said, yeah, it's nice, but I mean, I can't relate, and that's the serious truth. Like, nobody's closely knit to him. No, he's the boss. Nobody wants to say something that, will be taken, one kind of way when that's not your intention. So there's a kind of relationship and bond that you can have with your team members that your executive cannot have. That's the honest truth. Most people see them as their salary payer, as the person who gives them things to do, someone they have to report to. So being that person that actually cares about this person makes them relax a bit with you and helps you to build that trust. And I share this with my executive every time. There was just a big story. There was a time when we were going through a rough patch, I think sometime in 2023, and it was so funny, he wasn't even in the country. And so I was hearing from people that he was like lashing out at people, which is not usual. I knew that it was going to impact him, but I didn't even think that it was going to impact him like that. So I had a technical assistant at the time, so I scheduled a meeting with him, and I was like, oh, it's just a department office of the CEO check-in. And we got into the call, and he was like, oh yeah, so what's the agenda for this conversation? And I basically just said, yeah, like, how are you? I mean, that's what I wanted to know. I just wanted to know how you're doing. He was like, oh, I'm fine. At first he was like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. And I'm like, I don't think you are. I've heard so and so and so. And he's like, oh, who said that? I was like, you're not going to get that, even if I die. It's not coming out of my mouth. But, I'm concerned about you. Myself and his technical assistant had that conversation. And we had that check-in every week for about 4 or 5 weeks throughout the period of that. Now, nobody else in the company is thinking about him. That's the simple truth. Nobody else on the team is thinking about how this entire thing is, or even if they do think about it, it's difficult for them for a random person to just have that sort of conversation. So being that person who shows you care about your executive, super important. Third thing, anticipate their needs. You have to think steps ahead of your executive. And when I say this to people, because I mentioned a couple of when I say this to people tend to be confused as to what it is. Now, breaking it down, how do you get to the point where you can anticipate someone's needs? First of all, thinking impact. You cannot anticipate someone's needs if you're constantly thinking in tasks. You have to always think about the outcome. If you think about the task, things will forever be a one step for you. But if you're thinking about impact, you're thinking about outcome, you're able to think beyond the steps you're taking in the immediate. Second thing is planning. You need to plan. It's very important. I do a brain dump every Friday, just dump everything. And how I think about it is for the following week or for the imminent week, what does success mean for me? And then break that down, work it backwards. So what are the big things I need to do to meet this? What are the small things I need to meet these big things? If you do that, you're able to see actions in multiple steps. And you can say, okay, for this to happen, for step 1 to happen, or for step 4 to happen, step 1, 2, 3 needs to have happened. If you're not thinking like that, you will forever be reactive. And no, no executive wants a reactive PA. It's very irky. I can tell you for facts. It's very irky to have someone who is constantly reacting to issues with you. It's very difficult to work with someone like that. So breaking down things like that is also important. Then understanding your executive. You need to learn them. You need to pay attention. I tell my mentees all the time, pay attention to the person you're working with. Watch them. Watch them, study them. You don't have any other choice really. If you have to sit down, watch them and just look at them. Watch them like a TV show or something. Watch them and just look at what works for them. For instance, you can, after working with someone for a couple of weeks, you can tell that every morning they want coffee at so time. And you have coffee there, waiting for them, after a couple of weeks, or something like that. When I joined Space Finish, I noticed that whenever my CEO walked by the restroom door and it was opened, he would close it, he would shut it. And I noticed that he did it a couple of times. I started to shut the door myself every time I would pass. And it meant that the door was shut every time he was there. One day, a random day, like months later, he was like, that that I noticed that she shut the door every time we passed. Thank you so much. That thing used to do my head in. And I didn't even know that he noticed that I was doing it. But things like that, being someone who knows the executive and because you know them, you can predict what is going to happen, means that the person can trust you. They can trust you. The final thing is be dependable. It's really that simple. Be someone that they can trust. Building trust, you have to be trustworthy. It's not going to happen by chance. It's only say the things that you know you can do. Because a lot of the times we're under pressure to make promises. They tell you, I need this done tomorrow, and you say, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Don't be that person. Learn how to be assertive enough to say, okay, I always tell him, give me till end of day today. Let me come back to you with the timeline. Give me 2 hours. Let me come back to you with the timeline. What I do is that every time I tell him, this thing is going to be done by this time, I make sure, so I have to move heaven and earth to make sure it happens. I make sure it happens at that time because, it's so important. In fact, my growth in the business in general, I feel like I owe it to him to grow. I feel like I owe it to him to deliver. There are things that I even in my role right now, that it's not about me, it's about this person trusts me to do this thing, and as such, I have to figure it out. I have to do it. I have to do it. So, being someone that they can also trust is very important. You cannot build trust if you're not dependable. If you're a very, very flaky individual, someone who says, "Oh, I'll do it today," or you're always over promising and under delivering, and executives. It's very hard to change their mind. If they get to the point where they don't trust you, it's tough. It's tough to come back from that place. It's very difficult because they've had to experience people let them down multiple times. So their guards are very high. So it's always important to just start off on that trust note. If not, you're going to struggle to come back, and you're going to have to work your butt off to come back to a point of trust. So those are my things.
That's so powerful, and you already shared so much. I want to speak to executive assistants looking for new roles now. What are some of the, that's because you also spoke about your expectations in the role as a person. So yes, your executive has expectations, but you should also have expectations. I don't know if you had any experience where I would speak to Vivian. I don't know if you had any experience where you worked with someone or an executive who wasn't meeting your expectations. I'd like you to speak about that. What was that expectation, and how did you navigate that relationship? Did you up and leave? Did you have a conversation? How did you navigate that? Because I'm sorry, just to add, because I don't want executive assistants to continue to think about
Point you are he would say you are my group lead. So I saw myself MD, how do I call it, deputy or whatever, at this point in time. So I would, if it's something that, and most of the time, as time went on, I was able to make decisions, because I knew what, we had had conversations, I know what he's planning to do, because I am now his partner. So I knew what the decisions were, I was able to give feedback on his behalf, and then go and say, even if the feedback is not a conclusive one, it's something to say, can we schedule this for this time, if anything changes, I'll let you know, right? With that, engaging other stakeholders, the board, letting them know that things are changing, so that for MD to function and be best at what he does, we need to, manage his schedule better. So if you don't have a meeting schedule with him, you can't just walk into his office. Then I was working with other stakeholders, like his coach, for example, and even his personal life, he was that accessible. And yes, it's a good thing because he's an accessible person, but it was distracting him and not allowing him to achieve his goals. So I was able to put some kind of structure in place. It wasn't easy at the beginning, but it was something I was able to do through having conversations with him, through making sure that we're clarifying our objectives and our goals, and then checking in, monitoring and checking in once in a while to see what works. If this doesn't work, then changing to something else that works. So yeah, that happens. It will happen, but it's how you address it and manage it. And also, if you have an executive who collaborates with you, that's really very helpful.
But what I would share is a solution to the problem. So post time and money feedback. So when I joined Spaceberry, she was deep inside the operations. Like she said, any small problem, I want to talk to, I want to talk to him, I want to talk to him, I want to talk to him. He was on every project call, he was on everything, right? So it was, and because I know him, he was always tired, always burnt out. So even the business wasn't getting the best of him. So post the time and money feedback. I thought about it and came to him and I was like, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to break down your tasks into dollar tasks. So I said we're going to have $1,000 tasks, we're going to have $100 tasks, we're going to have $10 tasks, we're going to have $1 tasks. What I did for him was that he could see how he's spending his life. Essentially, so we started off with, so I was like, you know what we're going to do is, so we created the buckets and we identified the tax over the different amounts. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start off, I'm going to take off every single $1 tax. You have no business doing a $1 tax as a CEO, so I'm going to take it away. I'm not even going to do your $1 tax, we're going to find somebody who wants to do your $1 tax, but we're going to automate your $1 tax. Your $10 tax, I'm going to take all those $10 tasks off your table. I will either do them or find someone else to do them. Your $100 tasks, we're going to split them in half, and you're going to take some of them, and I'm going to take the other ones. And I want you to spend this amount of your time every week doing $1,000 tasks. And he was like, okay, so we'll do that. And we created a system to audit his time. So initially it was just based on, we're doing $1,000 tasks this week. So sometimes, some weeks he can go out to some weeks he sleeps and he's like, I need a couple $10 tasks this week. And I'm like, yeah, so we shouldn't have done that. So doing that for an extended period of time, and also it gave me clarity. So that when people come to me, they're like, oh, let's speak to him for something. And I'm like, what you want to talk to him about? And they're like, this, and I'm like, yeah, I think you should talk to COO about this. Or I think you should talk to project manager about it, actually. I don't think he needs to know about it. I don't think he can help you. Or I think I can help you with that, actually. Let me just get it done. So I did that for a while, and then the entire business got used to not having him in everything. And all of a sudden, he had so much time. I remember on one of his trips, because he spends quite some time outside of the country, I called him and I was like, what are you spending your time doing these days? And he was like, to be honest, I don't have anything in there. And I was like, yeah, cool. So we have to do, so then we created things, so we started to do a lot more strategic things. So we now started to look at the business and understanding, okay, what do we need to move from here to the next point? What is the next point? So this period, I want you need to go and get clarity as to what the next point of the business is. After we get the next points clear, okay, how do we get to the next point? Let's have a 5-year plan. Let's have a 5-year strategy. Let's have a 10-year plan. Let's have a 10-year, and that's how we were able to get him to the point that now he's not. So, I mean, the danger though is you tend to now take up that thing. So you as an EA, you need to also know, you have to also be very intentional about what you do and what you do not do, because you don't want to be someone that absorbs all the grunt work that he's meant to be doing or was doing before, because it doesn't also, it hinders your own growth. So I'm also I say it all the time, it's a question I ask myself all every single week. How can I automate this? Who can I delegate this to? I don't have to do everything. Was even before I became MD. When I was EC, chief of staff, I always had things that I was like, oh, I think I'm just going to let this person do this, or I think I have to figure out how to automate this. In fact, after a while working with him as EC, I automated the entire calendar scheduling thing, because it was a waste of time for me at that point. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. I onboarded the team on what the system was. I told them I'm going to check 3 times a day. If your meeting in his calendar is not in alignment with my rules, I'm going to take it out. No questions asked, no discussion had. So, and then I did that for him. People understood was required to have a meeting with him. And then that was just going on by itself. You imagine being an EA and not worrying about your boss's schedule. It was beautiful. I'm not even gonna lie. It was an amazing time. So I think getting that clarity for yourself and for your boss, how they should spend their time and communicating it to them in a way that is impactful, like money, would really help. So just for that sort of situation.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to pause here and let's see if anyone has any questions. Any questions? Thank you. So my last question would be, if you're going to say one thing to everyone here, what is one thing that they can start doing today to get to the next level in their role? We can just share one thing each and then wrap up the conversation. So for me, it's study, know your strengths, know your capacity and your capabilities, and build on what you know what you do best. So I know myself. I know the aspects of the business that I enjoy doing most, and I'm building capacity in that aspect. So as a lady trying to grow in a career, please study. There are loads and loads and loads of podcasts for EAs. Most of the things that all the young ladies here have spoken about are synonymous to every EA, be it in Africa, in Europe, in America, it's synonymous. So the same thing they're sharing here is what you will hear everywhere. So please keep studying, improving yourself, develop yourself, and know your strengths. Thank you.
So I would say what she said is very important. There is a quote that I live by, which is to thyself be true. It's very important to know who you are, know what it is that you want for your life. Very critical. I think that if there's anything that you leave here with, I think you should go back and think about what you want, because what can tend to happen, especially in this field, is that you can absorb the dreams of an executive, and before you know it, you're on a path that you're not, is very strange or different to where you actually want to head or where you want to end up. I think that being clear on what you want to do with yourself, what you want to do with your life, helps you to determine. There are people who want to be, so people on this panel here, she has worked as an EA for a very long time. There are people who want to do that. Is that what you want to do? It's not that not everybody wants to do that. If you don't want to do that, do you want to go into sales? Do you want to go into management? Do you want to go into marketing? Do you want to go into something else? So that you can start to chart your path more intentionally as you go in your careers.
Okay, I think a lot has been said, but I'd just like to say this, There's a saying I like so much, in God we trust, all else bring data. Right? And that data comes from you being consistent, diligent, intentional about, the impacts that you're trying to make in your work. And it is from that impact that your purpose comes out, right? And I'm just going to be honest with you, if you haven't transitioned yet from, impact to purpose, it's gonna take a while to get to the next growth stage here. So the quicker you are to finding, that transition from impact to purpose and understanding, yes, from support to impact, and then finding yourself fully. If you want to, continue on the journey of executive assistant, you also need to grow, right? And grow in such a way that your principal trusts you to do the work, without you being there. You have to, like she earlier said, you have to be trustworthy to be trusted, right? And one of the things that will help you, again, to be trustworthy is honesty. Like there's no, and just honesty and clarity. Be clear on what you're trying to communicate and be honest at every point in time. Because if you're caught in any, it may never be a lie, it will be a non, non-disclosure. Like you're not disclosing the fullness of your situation, and then it's seeming like you're lying to your principal. It could be really, really dangerous. So just always be completely open and honest. Like understand, it's like a marriage, like she said, be completely open and honest with your partner, with the person that you're supporting, and then you will have a smooth sail throughout. And if you're also looking to transition, once you find your purpose and find exactly what you like to do, long term, or what your person is long term when it comes to business, you will be able to find your next path. Thank you.
So I'll just write on everything that all the ladies have said here, and add that one thing I'll leave is for you to have a growth mindset, bearing in mind that regardless of what you decide, regardless of what you choose to do, remain in the function or transition into something else, you still need to grow and expand your knowledge or skill sets and all of that. So I'll just repeat a saying that was mentioned in the previous panel session, I think. A jack of all trades, master of none, is often better than a master of one. So as much as you can, learn something in everything, because working with an executive means you're going to be overseeing the entire business. So learn something about sales, even if you're not interested in it, just learn it. Because you're going to need that skill and use it later on eventually. Learn something about marketing, strategy, HR, operations, whatever it is, learn and apply the skills to what you do and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. I hope everyone has had a fantastic time.
Thank you so much. I really honor you. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, if you're to you.
Thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. That was very inspiring and very lovely as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I believe we've come to the end of the show, but hold on, sorry. Okay, yes. So before we leave, RMA actually said that she has 2 books to give out, and we have some questions for you as well. I will need my phone, sorry, the questions are very down to you. So you would have to answer these questions, and then you get to bring one book. And then you get a free book from RMA. Also, if you have already signed up for pictures, that's the headshots, professional headshots, they are downstairs right now. So if you want to take your pictures, just go downstairs and then you can get your professional pictures. If you don't know about it, you can always look at the slave so that you can get professional headshots pictures for 25,000 naira as opposed to 18,000 naira. So right now, I'm just asking you the question is quite simple. I mean, if you're very attentive, and this question is actually two people that came again. Probably you're going to get it. Two books to give by Remy, and the title is I'm still getting there. Sorry. Yes. So the title is You Get to Live Yourself, 2 Decades and a Dream. 2 Decades and a Dream, that's the title. So the first question is, mention 2 words Mary Barbara used to describe her working relationship with her boss. She mentioned 3 actually. So if you can mention 2, I'll give it. Well, that's a bonus. So I will give.
She mentioned trust and business.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, that's a bonus. Thank you anyway. Yes, you're correct. That's actually correct. So Queen's Roasting, she'll give you the book. The book is behind the chairs there. She'll give you the book here. Our first 3 points today. That's a very simple question. But she'll make it harder. Okay. Okay, the second question, the second winner. What was the name of the movie that the first keynote speaker played before she began speaking? Please, no. I didn't get your answer. I didn't get your answer, so I'll give it to a guy this time. Because we will answer our question. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, please give him a round of applause. Well, I give them a round of applause, actually. So please be Rosalie for the book. Yes, we've actually come to the end of this show. Thank you all so much. It's been very inspiring. Let's not forget that whatever we've learned, because we've really actually learned a lot, whatever we've learned, let us practicalize it in our day-to-day activities and also help other EAs out there. I mean, someone said that's like a community. It's the first ever summit, that our convener had. So it's a community. Make sure you use what you to teach other people so that the community gets bigger and bigger. And what else do I have to say? I want to thank our speakers, people that have come here and made everything possible, and also you, our participants as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this summit. Thank you for making everything possible, your passion, your clubs, your engagement, everything. And we hope that whatever we've done here would really impact you. The connections we made, we hope that it's lasts for a lifetime. So while we're done here, make sure you connect. I emphasize on connection. Networking is the key these days. Make sure you connect, make friends, and learn every day. So again, my name is Adriel Kiriwi. Bye.
Thank you so much, Adriel. Just to add, if you indicated that you wanted to take a professional headshot, the photographer is downstairs.